This webinar today is recorded and will be posted on our MPMA website and YouTube channel later this month. If you are listening today with a group, be sure to note all participants in the room and then email them to myself at vpmarketing@npma.org to ensure that everyone receives CEU credit. If you are registered and logged in yourself, you will automatically get the credit, so no need to email. Lastly, if you have questions during the presentation, please write them in the question box, and then we will review them at the end. Now I would like to introduce our speaker today, Ms. Yvonne Batcher. Yvonne currently serves as the Senior Director for the Property Management Office at Stanford University, a premier research-intensive university. She has also held staff and management positions in property administration with for-profit government contractors. Her credentials include a master's degree in education, certified professional property manager, and recognition as the NPMA Consulting Fellow. Mentoring and providing professional development guidance to individuals in the asset management field is a continuous activity in which she is involved. Yvonne is an instructor as well as a frequent workshop presenter throughout the U.S. As an active member of NPMA, she has held numerous leadership positions at chapter, regional, and national levels, including national president. She is one of NPMA's professional development instructors and is a recipient of the NPMA's Property Person of the Year Award. She is currently serving as NPMA's National Vice President of Membership. Yvonne will be presenting today on Property 101, Strategies for Adding Value to the Essential Role of Asset Management. Yvonne, take it away.
Thanks, Kim, and welcome everybody. It's exciting to see online how many of you are logged in this morning. Hopefully we have some information that is useful and informative for everyone. I know every time any of us as presenters work on these sessions, we not only share, but we learn along the way also. So I really appreciate the opportunity. So this morning we're going to be covering some strategies for how we as both individual contributors as well as leaders can add value within our organization to what we're doing, how we're doing it, why we're doing it. I think we've all seen, especially in the last few days, how essential it is for us to be flexible and ready to be able to not only be proactive, but to react to activities within our workplace. So let's take a look at, kind of what's driving I would say at a 50,000 foot view, what we do from a property management perspective, and then we'll explore a little bit more some specific strategies along the way. Kim, thank you for helping us click through the slides this morning. Really appreciate your help there. So
no problem.
Next, please. And by the way, feel free to ask questions, type in questions in the chat box as we go along, and we will be sure and answer them. Either I'll address them as we go through, or we'll certainly take a look at them at the end. So we're not going to get into, all the different business processes within property management, but in the bigger scheme of things, all of us, whether we're in a small or a large organization, and we can call this property management system, asset management system. It can go under various different names, inventory control, equipment management, etc. We're really looking at an overall process, policies, procedures, people, resources to manage the assets that we use to perform our jobs, to meet our expectations, to support our business needs. And there's a lot of different reasons why we do this. Many of us deal with many different compliance drivers, which I'll talk about a few of them in just a minute here. But essentially, we are one of the core business processes within an organization, property management. Whether you're a small individual 3 or 4 or 5 employee operation, or a large global enterprise that employs hundreds or maybe even thousands of employees. Asset management, property management, equipment management is really a core business process. I always like to think of it in terms of, could we or would we be able to do our jobs regardless of what that job is if we didn't have the equipment, the tools, the resources, the mechanics to be able to perform those tasks? The answer would probably be no in many, many cases. So it is one of the core business processes. And with it comes a lot of responsibility, a lot of fiduciary or financial responsibility, a lot of responsibility in terms of effectively managing, making the most use of what we have, using it in an appropriate and approved and authorized manner to support our business needs, etc. And in order to do that, underlying and kind of overarching, I would say, it's not underlying, but overarching things is really to be able to control, use, preserve, protect, repair, maintain, etc. that infrastructure, that group of assets that we deal with. A lot of different ways we can do that, and we'll explore a few of the strategies, again, as I said, today. So being in a position where we can contribute, not just by doing our work, but effectively contribute to the ongoing and proactive approach within an organization is really essential. So let's take a look at our business environments for just a second. All of us here on this call and many others throughout the profession are work in various different business environments. Next slide, please, Kim. Whether we are a government agency, whether we're an educational institution, a university, state and local, regardless of the size of operation, really, if you think about it, even if we have a home-based business, we are managing our resources and assets to a certain degree. So all of these different business environments provide us with challenges as well as opportunities to look at how we can effectively do what it is we do. There's going to be a whole series of different requirements that we have to meet. And on the next slide, Kim, we list what I call the compliance playbook. So regardless of where we are, there's going to be rules, regulations, policies, procedures, etc., that we use as our recipe book, right, as our guide to perform and do what we need to do. In some cases, they're very prescriptive. They identify specifically what we have to do. In others, they give us a general description of an outcome that we have to obtain along the way. And I would venture to say most of us on the call today, in some fashion, deal with most of these items listed on the slide. If you are a government contractor, if you work for the federal government, you're dealing with a lot of regulations from either the federal acquisition regulations, the OMB circulars, etc. You have state, local accounting regulations. Even IRS guidelines influence a lot of what many of us do. For example, specifically relative to gifts of equipment and that type of thing. Export control in this day and age, things can be global very quickly, very easily. However, with all of these actually come different degrees of risk and responsibility. And the challenge is to understand the puzzle that all of these form, that we have to be able to interlace and be sure that our processes are as streamlined as possible while we're still meeting all of these different obligations. There's a lot of variables we deal with. Part of it's going to be driven by what's our business, what's our operation, what are who's the customer base that we deal with, what are the priorities of our organizations, etc. So a lot of different factors that come into play that we need to hone our skills on. So let's take a look very briefly at what are the asset life cycles, the phases of the asset life cycle. In a nutshell, we have the upfront plus process, the planning, acquisition. Next slide, please, Kim. So then we move into what I would consider probably the largest active facet of a life cycle that we're involved in, and that's the stewardship and management. Once you get the assets, what do you do with it? How do you do what you need to do? Who's involved? What decisions need to be made up until the point it's no longer necessary and becomes excess. So in each phase, the reason I bring this up today is to keep in context that within each phase, there are distinct decisions that are made. There are specific processes. They may overlap and interact with each other, but there are very specific components that give us so many different ways in which we can effectively contribute and add value in our organizations. So on the next slide, we look at briefly, what are the process outcomes? What are the key business processes that all of us need to have within our operations or our systems, regardless of type or size of business or where we're placed? If you look at each of these as a business process, something that needs to happen along the way that involves people, things, equipment, processes, decisions, etc., all of them can either be tightly integrated, be strengths within an organization, or they can provide opportunities for us to add value by being creative, objective, innovative, forward-thinking, etc. So that's where we're going to delve a little bit more as we get into the meat of what we're talking about today. And why should we even think about adding value to the property process, to the role of asset management? So let's explore that just a little bit. Why add value? Next slide, please, Kim. So first of all, and these are not in any ranking order of priority, I would say they're all equally important depending on your circumstances, depending at what point you are dealing with any particular issue or challenge. So first of all, I would say it's really important for us to keep an open mind and seek opportunities to add value, because today's environment, as we've seen, especially in the last few days, things can change pretty much on a dime. You know, we always kind of jokingly say that, hey, things are rapidly changing, but boy, have we seen extreme examples of that in the last few days. We need to be ready, we need to be competitive, we need to be sharp, we need to be ready and able and practiced in order to be able to be flexible. We all want to be successful. We individually, we as groups, we as teams, we as departments, we as business units, our employers all want to be successful. That is why we're here, is to be able to perform and to provide a service, a product, etc. So in order to do that, everybody in their own way, in their own role, needs to display some type of commitment to position ourselves in a way that we are contributors, either individually or as a group, that we want to succeed and that we aim to be the best that we can be. From a performance standpoint, you know, one of the things we often look at as supervisors or managers is how are the individuals in our groups performing? There's going to be various different degrees of commitment, of skills, of what's the word I'm searching for? Not aggressiveness, but assertiveness in terms of where people want to go, their own personal vision of where they want to be. And you're really looking to seek to be the best that you can be, and we want to retain those top performers because they usually also have the broader skill set. So next slide, please, Kim. Let's take a look at what I would say are 7 proven strategies that enable you. We're going to take a brief look at what can you do individually as an individual contributor. And then from a leadership perspective, we're going to take a look at a few characteristics and strategies from that perspective. Are they exclusive one from the other? I would say no, but together they really combine, I think, to pose a really good picture. So strategy number 1, know your organization. You know, this may seem like, why are you telling me this? I know this is really important, but what do I mean by know your organization? Know not only, okay, I'm from Stanford University, we're an educational institution, we're an extensive research organization. So that's the business purpose. What's important to Stanford? What's important to the Honeywells, the Boeings, the Northrop Grummans, the whomever you're involved with? What is important? What is valuable? What is the scope of responsibility and take a look at that from all different levels. You personally, in your specific role, what is the responsibility of the team that you're involved with, of the department you're involved in, of the business unit, of the division? All of those have various different bandwidths, I would say, in terms of scope and responsibility. Understand who has what role, and sometimes this is a moving target. Reorganizations happen, a lot of times they happen and we don't even realize they're happening in some groups. But knowing the roles and authorities that people have, also knowing the roles and authority that you have in terms of decision making, signature authority, etc. All of those play a key part. And ultimately, we really need to kind of navigate what I call the people puzzle. It's the who's who, the little bit, and maybe a lot of internal politics. Who influences whom? How do you influence other people? What things in an organization are what I would call non-negotiables? They need to happen regardless. We need to find a way to get from point A to point B. And all of that is going to help frame and shape and confirm and give you a reality check in terms of what are the priorities. Oftentimes in property, we're very creative, and it's very easy for us to sidetrack and kind of not circle back to what is our specific target, our specific goal. But knowing some of these kind of things, not just for your immediate group, but a little broader within your organization, is really, really important. So strategy number 2, know your strengths, okay? What are you intrinsically good at? There's a lot of skills, innate skills, that we bring to the table. Some of them are not even learned skills. They're just in our personality, in our perspective, based on our history, based on our experiences. What are you good at doing? What are you talented in? What are your skills? What's your knowledge set? What can or can't you do? Some things are from an education standpoint, some are from a physical standpoint, some are from a tools and resources standpoint. What are your strengths and where can you apply them? Not everything is going to apply in every situation. That's what makes the beauty of having a team really, really excellent, because not everyone, or I would say probably seldom, does everybody on a team, whether it's 2 people or 20, does everybody have exactly the same set of skills, the same strengths? We all have different approaches, different demeanors, different personalities, different ways of interacting and communicating. Know what those strengths are and really use them to the best of your ability. I would caveat that by one thing though. As you're evaluating your strengths, be realistic, be objective, and be honest with yourself. It's very easy to say, oh, I'm an Excel expert because I can do these 5 things. Is that really being an Excel expert? Or really should you have a much broader scope? I am an expert in the FAR regulations. Wow, all of that encases so many different things. Be realistic so you know kind of where you're going from and where you need to go. Understand what your comfort zone is and be willing to stretch, because by stretching and going a little bit beyond, kind of taking on those challenges that are just slightly out of reach, really can help us expand our knowledge base. So for the next opportunity, we're even in a better position. And last but not least, I would say, when you're looking at talent, skills, knowledge within yourself, or even as you're assessing those within others, look beyond just their job title. Okay? A job title doesn't necessarily really reflect on what is being done, what tasks, what responsibilities, how the individual or the team is contributing to the overall big picture. So keep all of those, and they will help you really identify, again, what's really important, where you need to build on, or what you can capitalize as a resource in going forward. Strategy number 3. Don't forget, if you have questions along the way, feel free to add them to the chat box there. Demonstrate initiative. Don't be shy. Step up to the plate. Oftentimes we say, hey, is there anyone willing to be a volunteer? Is there anyone willing to take this on? And oftentimes I would venture to say it's the same 2 or 3 people that kind of step up to the plate. Step a little bit out of your comfort zone. If you don't want to take the lead or feel you're unable to take the lead, quote unquote, then be a participant, be a collaborator, be a subject matter expert for a particular piece of the process. Along the way, for whatever piece of the puzzle you participate in, take responsibility, okay? Deliver on that. Sometimes life gets in the way, especially with volunteer activities and other things take priority. Even then, circle back, take responsibility for what we were doing, pick up where you left off, work with partnerships, collaborate with others, help others along the way, accept help. Sometimes that is a really difficult thing to do, and you say, well, accepting help isn't really demonstrating initiative. Yes, it is. Being open and willing to accept help usually not only helps you, but it helps the other person too. And together, it's a way of demonstrating partnership, teamwork, etc. One bullet here, it says, don't let recognition be your reason. In other words, it's not always about what's in it for me. It's really about what's better for the overall goal, what's better for the group, what's better in order to achieve what we're trying to achieve. Absolutely, most of the time, something is going to be in it for you individually. But generally speaking, I would say we should be cautious on how much we let that be the driver, because results are going to result in recognition, whether that was your initial intent or not. And showing initiative, really you're looking at preventing future problems. It's not just what's happening today, but being proactive, thinking, staying ahead of the game, thinking a little bit ahead. And last but not least in this area, be resilient. We don't always totally succeed at everything we do. Learn from it, go on, stay positive, and keep going. Resiliency is about rebounding. It's about continuing. It's about working through the steps and learning along the way as we go. Strategy number 4 kind of goes hand in hand with demonstrating initiative, is be a problem solver. Try not to be a problem causer, although sometimes inadvertently that's what may happen, hopefully very few times, but be a problem solver. And this doesn't have to be an astronomical, huge problem. Little problems along the way that are solved really add up to the bigger picture. There's very, very often more than one way to get to an end objective. You know, we often hear the term, at least we used to, there's more than one way to skin a cat. I know that doesn't sound really positive, but it's really kind of the objective being that there's more than one way to get to your end goal. Understanding the problem, really not only say, okay, we have problem XYZ, but what's causing it? Why is it happening? How often? Understanding that underlying cause helps you then be able to be a problem solver. We're often told also, you know, think outside the box. Well, you know, what does that really mean? You're really looking at other opportunities, looking at other options. Put all ideas on the table. Don't assume that an idea is not a good one. Try and leave your biases aside. Again, be resilient. A lot of this has to do with, you know, you're kind of going in and out, but taking sometimes 2 steps forward and 1 back. You're still making progress, because eventually you will not be taking steps back. Be on the lookout. I always say on here, be on the hunt, meaning keep your eyes and ears open to kind of what's going on. I heard someone say so-and-so. That's affecting me. That's the reason why we're having this issue. So be alert, be aware, stay in tune to what's happening around you, and leverage your resources. In other words, use your networking, use your people skills, use your tools, use your past experience, etc. All of those availability items that are available to you help you be a problem solver. And on this topic, last but not least, don't be afraid to speak up. Okay, be present, offer ideas. Also, listen. Listen to what other people say. Not only listen to what they say, but listen or observe body language, approach, tone, expression. All of those are indicators too of kind of what's underlying to a given situation. Strategy number 5, keep an eye on potential improvements. Remember, in the end, regardless of what type of business we have, time is money. We all get paid somehow, somewhere, in some manner for what we do. Time equals money. Efficiency means how are you utilizing that time? How best are you being productive to best meet the goals and objectives of that organization? Keeping an eye on potential improvement also usually adds to a very positive morale, because it means that you're open to hearing ideas, looking at new things, looking at a process and being willing to really objectively look at it. Don't take it personally like, oh, I've been doing this for so long, it must be the right way to do it. But looking at breaking it down into increments in terms of where can we make improvements. Because again, if a step is taking 10 or 15 minutes, that may not seem like much, but extrapolate that over how many people do it, how often is it done, how often is it a problem, what does it take to fix it, etc. All of those things equate to cost and potential cost savings. But really keeping an eye on open for potential improvement, really it gives you an opportunity to collaborate, to work together, to come up with different ways, maybe shifting responsibility for who does what, changing handoff points, etc. Think of, again, what we need to achieve, who your customer is, and always, always, always keep your process, tools, knowledge, training, skills, networking opportunities, on and on and on. Those are all areas that always have potential for improvement. Maybe not all at the same time, but somewhere along the way, there's always an opportunity for improvement. So just be alert, keep an eye open. Again, not only individually, but as a group, as a team, as a business unit, etc. Strategy number 6. 6 out of 7. Sharpen your technical skills. This is all about knowing the reason behind, knowing the regulations, understanding the implications, being able not only to read something, but interpret it, taking ownership of your professional development. Please, please, please don't wait for someone to say, hey, here's a roadmap. These are the classes that I want you to take or that I need you to take. That's all well and good, but you taking the authorship, the responsibility for what is the trajectory you want to have. Ultimately, how you sharpen your skills can take many, many different facets. Stay current, be relevant, stay on track, focus on what is necessary for the situation and the environment you're in. There's a lot of different trends happening in business today. There's a lot of different approaches, technology, etc. What are the priorities for where you need to go? What are those priorities? And sharpen the skills that you need in order to do that. In a nutshell, I would say ask questions. Not only what is the process, but what happens if I didn't do this? What would happen if I did it this other way? Who would need to be involved? Be curious. Ask, look at the various facets of a given scenario, and often that will lead you down the path of understanding what you need to learn next. Ultimately, you want to invest in yourself because that's going to make you a better contributor and give you more tools in your toolbox, if you will, to really contribute and be a great participant. Last but not least, strategy number 7. Not that there are only 7, but these are the ones we're focusing on today. Improve your communication skills. One of the biggest fears individuals have is public speaking. This is not only about public speaking, although I would absolutely encourage all of you, if this is something, public speaking, whether it be making a presentation to a group of 1 or 2 people, or 500 or 600 people, or anywhere in between, practice is going to help. You can read all the books you want, you can listen and see and watch and observe other presenters, but until you're up there, until you're standing in those shoes, you don't get the full experience. Communication skills is so essential. I would say it's becoming even more critical with the diverse work locations. With us working remotely, there's a whole different level and type and approach in terms of keeping and building communications and working relationships, regardless of whether you're the CFO, the CEO, the chief of the board of trustees, or whether you're the reception, the welcome committee in an organization. Not saying that one is in all ways more important than the other. They're all essential and good contributions to making an organization run. All of us really can improve on our communication skills. Being able to articulate, being able to be succinct, that's probably one of the biggest challenges. One is overcoming the fear of communicating and presenting, whether it's public speaking or writing or communicating corrective action or suggested improvements. Sometimes it's easier to communicate when it's complimentary. It's a little tougher when you're trying to turn something around and change a process. So being tactful, being able to be sensitive to other people's perspectives, concerns, etc., all of those is very important. And the expectation these days is that we are articulate and we do have good communication skills. I would say in virtually every interview process, there's a question about communication. How do you communicate? What's your communication style? What would you do if? That's all about not only knowledge, but how do you communicate? How do you articulate? How do you share results? And I started to say, and I myself got sidetracked just a little bit, one of the challenges is being able to deliver key points in a very brief period of time. When you are invited to present, say, to a management meeting or a staff meeting, you don't have the luxury necessarily, or I would say you rarely have the luxury of having more than 15 minutes, maybe even less. Even getting on an agenda sometimes is a major accomplishment. So you want to be able to synthesize and narrow down the key points and topics that you want to present. Who's that target audience? What is the most important to them? What do you want to be the outcome or the results gained from that communication that you just experienced or that you participated in? So again, it's not about, oh, how do I do this in a pretty fancy way? It's how do I get the point across, and what do I want them to get out of it? What are the objectives? All of that boils around communication. Very easily we could have, a multi-day session about all these different things, but if you're nervous about it, practice. If you're not sure, have a trusted, I would say a brain trust, a group of individuals. Maybe it doesn't even have to be a large group, 1 or 2 people. Who are your advisors? Who are your proofreaders? Who are those that you can say, what do you think if? Practice, have a mentor. Again, practice, know your target audience. Remember, communication is important at all levels, at all times, really, within what we're doing. So we've captured 7 basic strategies. Again, it's not that these are exclusively the only 7 that exist, but I think they're really essential strategies that we all could benefit from and all could use. If we feel comfortable, if we feel that we're proficient in all of them, then help others achieve proficiency or improvement in those areas. Be open, be a contributor, add value to your organization. So let's take just a few minutes here to kind of look at that from a slightly broader perspective. In a leadership capacity, in a leadership role, okay, how does some of this fit, and what can we as leaders do to contribute or to be sure that our groups, our organizations, our business units also add value to the overall objectives of our organization. First and foremost, we need to deliver results. Okay, if we're not delivering results, chances are they may start looking for somebody that can. Okay, it's about performance. These days, I would also say it's also really important to be transparent about your process. What was the criteria used for decision making? What were the priorities? How did I do this? What worked? What didn't? Oh, by the way, what's coming up? Here's a heads up. This is the goal that we need to be able to meet. It's also about approach. And I put this first bullet on here purposely. It's not only about go, in other words, being directive of you shall achieve this, but let's go, let's participate. You are, even as a leader, you are still to some degree an individual contributor. So it's really about that camaraderie, that teamwork building that is going to enable us to deliver effective results. So the next slide gets to, again, the point that we're all experiencing really, truly kind of right in our face in the last few days. Change is constant. Change can be unexpected. The degree of change, yeah. We always say, oh yeah, change always happens. Change is a constant. But sometimes what catches us a little bit off guard is the degree of change, the speed at which change occurs, how it affects us directly. We may think, oh yeah, it's going to affect us in this and this way. And then you start really thinking about it. It's like, oh, okay, so that means it's going to affect this other related activity. So looking at it, be able to either lead in a change, in generating a change, in implementing a change, or maybe coordinating that change. Point being, it's always going to be around. Change is always constant. The challenge is, how can we continue to thrive and still be productive and not let the anxiety or the stress of change limit us into where we can go and how we make decisions. Sometimes one deterrent is we get caught in too much analysis. At some point, you really have to be able to make a decision, move on, maybe document why and how and what was the rationale. You can come back later and evaluate. But look at systemic change. In other words, what are the core, the essential elements of a process, of a thing, of an individual, an approach, etc. Not just transactional change. I'm not just fixing this transaction or that transaction, but what can affect the overall flow, the interactivity between processes and between groups and between people. That's what I mean more about systemic change. Long-reaching, long-lasting, not just transactional change. And of course, I think I mentioned, don't forget to document what the change was, why it was made, and as of when was it effective. Oftentimes we look back, well, was that the policy at the time? Is it the policy now? When did that change? Because you're going to be on both sides of that fence, the before and the after, and you're going to want to know how to deal with things at given points in time. In the next slide, we look at another approach as a leader is be innovative, be open to new ideas. At some point, no idea is a bad idea. On the other hand, for those that are helping contribute to those ideas, you being open to new ideas will give them the latitude and the freedom to express ideas that they may not otherwise. Maximizing the use of technology. We're delivering these sessions via GoToMeetings, webinar. Some of us use other applications, Zoom, etc. They're similar but different. And we need to leverage what those tools are. Be creative, be innovative, try delivering something, maybe a different approach to training, a different style of communicating, a different level of detail for a different target audience. What are your options? There are many, many options. Very seldom, there could be times, but I would say very seldom is there only one way to achieve something. So consider, what is your broad spectrum? There could be little tiny changes, or could be major changes. There could be elimination of steps altogether because they're the ones causing the problem and disrupting the process. So what is your spectrum of options? What are the choices? What are the risks involved? I would also advise, seek what is possible, not just probable. And say, what does that really mean? The possibility of trying something, of experimenting, of looking at a way that something has never been done before, be it small or large, those things are possible. What is the likelihood of that being the optimum result? I don't know. We could get into all kinds of statistical analysis, etc. But don't be afraid to seek what is possible, because you are able to do it at this point in time. And then looking at the benefits reaped from that. Bottom line is, there's going to be different degrees of risk. Minimal to maximum. What is your appetite for risk? What is the organization's appetite for risk? But being prepared, being innovative, knowing your background, having your technical skills, knowing who your target audience is, all of those things roll into then being able to support an innovative environment. And next we have being responsible. Okay. It's very, very easy to point the finger at someone else. Oh, that's not my job. That was out of scope. That's not in my job description. Okay. What are your obligations? And I would venture to say the vast majority of us in our job descriptions have that little line that say other duties as assigned. Okay. So not only should we be open to other new things that come, but know what our obligations are. Rank imposes responsibility. By that I mean, depending on your job, depending on your scope of responsibility, depending on your position, there are different levels of responsibility and authority. So, not everything's going to go perfect all the time. Sometimes we have to just accept the fact that the buck stops with us and accept responsibility, even if something didn't work. Sometimes you learn more by what didn't work than by what worked. So accepting that responsibility, being clear on what the expectations are. What do they expect from me? What do you expect from others? One of the toughest things to do sometimes is really to articulate what the expectations are. We all struggle with it to a certain degree, but the more clear we are, the easier it is for us all to navigate and be successful and go forward. Sometimes we have to be very directive. It's not like, well, you may want to consider da-da-da. Okay? You may need to be a little more explicit and directive in what you're doing. Being the responsible party often means you have to drive the bus. Okay, you have to be the one in charge. How you do that, how you gain commitment is really important. Commitment is almost more important sometimes than control. Control means that everything is very prescriptive. There's one way to do things, and that's the only way to do it. You have decision making about every single little step along the way. Delegate that to others. It's amazing how people thrive and step up to the opportunity when given that ability, and that fosters commitment on their part. So we want to be leaders, we want to be proactive, we want to be responsible at different levels, but we also want to get buy-in from those that we work with and that we work for. So all of those are really, really essential at all levels, regardless of where we are. And looking at the last 2 points, getting good people. Okay. By that I mean selection of teams. Who's on your team? Who are you hiring? Who's part of your department? The next slide, please, Kim. Getting good people, it really matters. Regardless of how much automation, of how much technology, of how much we work remotely and we communicate via a screen that is in front of us or a camera that's in front of us, people matter, okay? We not only give respect, but by giving respect to others, we earn their respect, okay? Complementary skills, and by that I mean skills, abilities, knowledge that benefit each other, okay? Not, and I don't mean compliment in terms of, hey, that's a good job. I mean, this skill manages a process, this other skill contributes to a process. How do they help each other? How do they coexist in order to meet the end objective? So complementary skills amongst your team is really important. And knowing what skills your people have, knowing people that are able, willing, and have the keen desire to participate really also gives you an opportunity as a leader to provide mentorship. And again, when I say leader, I don't mean necessarily a manager or someone, you know, high up on the boxes of the org chart. Each of us play a leadership role in whatever facet we're involved in. It doesn't mean that it's only the boss's job or only the CFO's job. Really, all of us can be leaders within our own universe, I guess you could say, within your own atmosphere. Not only are we sharing information, but as I said at the very beginning of our session today, we always learn from others. No matter how many years you've been around, no matter how many people you've worked with, there's always the opportunity to learn. And sometimes we think, well, you know, that person only has, you know, 1 year, you know, 1 nanosecond out of college. I know more than they do. In many ways, maybe so. In other ways, you'd be surprised what you can learn from others. So really being open to that. And don't forget the value of recognition, saying thank you, recognizing people for a good job, small, medium, large. Sometimes those little thank yous go a long, long way in helping you what to do. And bottom line, as we wrap it up for today, some general principles. We've talked about a lot of different things here today. We can't do everything at once, okay? You really can't do everything at once. You may think you can. You know, the whole notion of, hey, I'm a great multitasker, there may be a lot of things that are happening somewhat concurrently, but at any given point in time, you're focusing on one area over another. What are the expectations of you? What are your expectations of others? And are you meeting them? If not, circle back and use some of these strategies to really tie into the process and make yourself value added and be successful. Don't be afraid to go above and beyond. I can't tell you how many times over my career I've heard people say, I need this promotion and then I can show you what I can do. It's kind of the reverse, okay? Go above and beyond, demonstrate what you can do, recognition will follow. Always, always think of the question, how, why, how can I add value? Why is this important? Why is this essential? Measure and document. Be curious, ask questions. Remember, even the small steps eventually get you to where you want to be. Many different things we could talk about, you know, specific things on, you know, how to manage metrics, how to document, how to audit, all of those things. All of that is part of the big picture, but hopefully today we have focused on a few strategies that each and every one of us can apply, whether we're novices or experienced in what we're doing. There's always opportunity to provide value using some of the tools that we've talked about here today. So hopefully you have found this interesting and applicable to each of you, relevant to some of the things we're facing in today's work environment. And I thank you for the opportunity of being here today and for you taking the time to participate in the session today. Kim, any questions?
We did have one question come in and then a comment. So I'll start with the question. How has your personal NPMA certification experience been essential in your asset management role?
Oh, absolutely. Quite honestly, I can say in my situation, if I had not been involved in NPMA, I would probably not be in my career at all. My background originally was secondary education, and that's the direction I was headed in. And then circumstances, led me to kind of fall into a job that I didn't even realize was part of property or asset management. Jobs that I have moved from time to time, and I've been very lucky and had longevity in several jobs, have been specifically due to NPMA. The recruiters reached out to NPMA, asked for some references, and that kind of was a domino effect. I would say certification and experience, absolutely, they add to your credibility. They are recognized within an organization. In our case, I work at a university. Education, credentials, and I would say not only in universities, but everywhere, education and credentials really add a lot of backing, support, credibility, confirmation of skills and knowledge to the person that is looking at you, so to speak, on paper, or just hearing or reading about you. So absolutely, if you have not achieved a level of NPMA certification, go for it. If you have achieved a level and have others to go for it. Don't hesitate. It'll totally be worth it.
Thanks, Yvonne. I think we have one more question that came in. Do you feel it's important to seek advice from your peers about areas you need to improve on to be receptive to constructive criticism?
So I interpret that question to mean, in other words, kind of rephrasing it, how can I ask for advice and input from others? And should I? Should you? Yes. I would say be mindful in how you ask the question, and also be able to open the door for honest feedback. Again, you may need to kind of separate yourself a little bit and not take something personally, but how you ask the question is really important. Should you ask the question? Absolutely. You see yourself in one way, even when we look into a mirror, we see ourselves one way. Others see us a different way. Others respond to us. They may be reactive to how we communicate, to how we present ourselves. So hearing someone else's opinion is always really important. Many of us do like 360 evaluations when it's performance review time. Yeah, that's kind of a formal way of doing it. Doing it informally periodically, working with a mentor, working with a small group of collaborators or friends. Absolutely. Don't hesitate to do it, and maybe even offer to provide them feedback at some point. So it's a very collaborative thing that you can do.
Okay, I had one comment come in. In regards to leadership within asset management, I've found it useful to learn what motivates others, public recognition, responsibility, private recognition, to better motivate our peers, leaders, and employees. Definitely agree there. I think there's one more question. What is the best way to learn the rules, laws embedded into each other in property management?
If you're referring to kind of like that whole regulatory roadmap I was referring to, wow, what's the best way to learn? Be curious, ask questions, research, look at what applies to a given situation. A lot of it, if you were to sit and read all of the technical aspects, it's like, wow, that is a real cure for insomnia. But oftentimes, if you talk to others and say, hey, what's your understanding? Reach out to those in your NPMA network and say, how would you interpret this? What is the reference for XYZ? We don't all have everything memorized, but we can ask the question. I would say researching, understanding the given situation, asking your peers, looking at past history, those are all different ways we can learn. And kind of understanding what it is and what is the regulatory or the compliance requirement behind what we have to do. Then you know where to go look for the information. Hopefully that helps.
Okay, I have 2 more questions. Everybody is participating today, which is great. So the first one is, would you recommend finding an experienced mentor in your organization?
I think we should all at some point consider a mentor. Now, having a mentor means many different things. It could just be a friend that you bounce ideas. If you have a formal mentor relationship, oftentimes that is more of an advisory situation where someone is providing you feedback, observations, input. Should we have mentors? Sure. To what degree it's a formal relationship as a mentor-mentee relationship, it really kind of depends probably on the level of responsibility and scope you expect. But really it's about having resources to ask questions, bounce ideas against, and also to learn from their experiences in terms of what can help you. If you haven't had a chance to be a mentor to someone, that's a really cool opportunity too. You'd be surprised how much you learn by sharing information with others and learning what motivates them and how and why and all of those underlying facts. Kim, I think there was another part of that question.
Yeah. No, so there's one more question, different. It's different.
Okay.
Okay, so it says, I know we talked about sharpening your technical skills. Besides NPMA, where else can we get information on asset management?
Oh, that's $1 million question. I think, well, there are many other organizations, but looking not only at the term asset management, but looking at what is a task, what is a process, and researching based on those keywords will give you many other resources. There's a lot of training. Certainly there's a lot of great books. If you're not sure what is a great resource to read for a given thing, reach out, post something like on the NPMA forum, or reach out to your network of peers at work and ask them where they get their additional information. So it's not just about asset management per se in terms of those business outcomes we talked about, receiving, acquisition, identification, etc. But so much of what we do has to do with other skills, analysis, communication, building relationships, problem solving, all of those other skills. I would say probably over half of what we do is about the soft skills, not just the technical. And all of it really rolls into the big picture of our technical ability and knowledge to do our job. So hope that helps.
Thanks, Yvonne. Okay, so I'm going to be mindful of everyone's time. I know we have about 2 minutes. I want to thank Yvonne again for speaking today. Great presentation. Love all the questions. Our next webinar is scheduled for next week on Thursday, March 19th at 1 p.m. Eastern. Scott Peterson will be presenting on the art of procedure development. You can register for that webinar on our NPMA website under the Asset Management Awareness Month page. Also, we'd love to continue this discussion online since we had so many great questions today. So check out today's NPMA Facebook group post. We're adding a question in there for what additional strategies do you use to show the value of asset management for your organization. So let's keep up that great conversation over on our social media page. Everyone, again, thank you for participating. Yvonne, thank you again. And I hope you all have a great day.
You're very welcome. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.